During the math test, you walk into your seat, sit down, you start taking the test. The student behind you, 10 minutes into the test, taps you on the shoulder, whispers to you that he wants to see your paper and to slide it over. What do? A group of your friends in the cafeteria at lunchtime starts bad-mouthing a friend of yours who's not there that day. What do you say? How do you respond to them? You go to the mall. You meet a really great guy or girl, and you just can't wait to tell your friends about this person. And when you run into school, and you tell them that you've met this person and you want to start dating him, they look at you and they say, "Oh, he's so weird. He's not cool. You really going to date him?" What would you do? You're at a party, and a bunch of your friends start drinking, and you don't want to, but you sort of feel that there's some pressure being placed upon you. What do you say to them? How do you respond? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here tonight for the Norristown Area High School Parents Club second annual talk show. The subject this time, teen pressure, peer pressure. How does it work? What does it cause you to think about? How does it make you act? The format this year is going to be the same as last year. We have with us a distinguished set of people acting as our panel who will respond to some questions and some areas that students have suggested. People in the audience are encouraged to ask questions and become a part of this because it is really meant to be a kind of informal dialogue. And those of you at home will periodically see a number, 630-5097, flashing across your screen, and you are encouraged to call in and pose questions to our panel. I'd like at this time for our panel to introduce themselves, starting with Chuck James, who is on my left.
Good evening, my name is Chuck James. I am presently the home and school visitor for the Norristown High School and the Roosevelt Annex. I've been working in this capacity for approximately 5 years right now. My job responsibilities are to monitor the attendance of both these buildings and to try to prevent the dropout rate, to decrease the dropout rate in these schools. Thank you.
Detective Sergeant Richard Stewart, West Norriton Township Police Department. I'm in charge of the juvenile unit and have been for the last 10 years. I've been in law enforcement for the last 19 years.
My name is Deborah Wilson-Leslie. I'm a drug and alcohol prevention specialist and a therapist.
I'm Deputy Sheriff William Jackson from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department right here in Norristown. I've been with the department for 7 years. I'm a DARE instructor, which is a drug abuse resistance education. I teach in Lower Pottsgrove, Epiphany, and New Hanover Township School.
Hello, my name is Michael Taylor. I'm a middle school teacher in Norristown Area School District. I teach currently 8th grade social studies and coach boys and girls sports throughout the year, and this is my 18th year of teaching.
Hello, my name is Alicia Kent. I'm a senior here at Norristown, and I'm currently student council president.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Bob DeWalk. I'm here this evening in the capacity as a pastoral counselor representing the Norristown Pastoral Counseling Center, which is located in the Central Presbyterian Church at Stanbridge and Erie Streets. We're an ecumenical agency, and we seek to link the best of religion and psychology for the health of people.
Thank you all very much. I think you can hear that we have a very diverse panel, and they certainly should be able to deal with and talk about some of the problems that have come up. And also, of course, all of us were teenagers at one time. We had the pressures placed upon us that you have, and the same kind of interest and the same kind of difficulties that many of you young people are experiencing. In a very impartial or maybe even an inaccurate survey of some of our student body, 4 general areas in this idea of peer pressure seem to come up. The first of these was a question of just going along with the crowd, particularly in areas of grades and in cutting, 2 issues I think that many of the parents sitting here would also be interested in. Second area was the area of alcohol, drinking, and you'll notice that we have many of our panel who have had previous experience in working with alcohol abuse and some of the problems with us. A third area was the area of drugs and their use, and a fourth was the area of becoming sexually active. We kind of touched upon this last year in sexuality, and we're going to touch upon this again this year during our discussion. Those people interested in phoning in, this is sort of the order that we are going to go in, and maybe you can gear your calls during a session dealing with one of these areas. I'd like to start out by reading two quotes that come from two different sources. The first of these is from an author of a book called The 9 Most Troublesome Teenage Problems and How to Solve Them. It's interesting to see there are only 9. That's very encouraging. We ought to be able to solve 9 problems. By a man named Lawrence Bauman. And the quote reads as follows. During the teenage years, the peer groups tend to fulfill a protective function. There is a feeling of safety when everyone in a teenager's peer group gives approval to a particular kind of behavior. And the second quote is a very short one, which comes from the August 1989 issue of Teen Magazine. Reads as follows. Going along with the in crowd now, indicating in high school, is part of developing a teenager's own identity. The author of this article went on to imply that it really was necessary for teens to become part of peer groups and maybe even to yield to peer pressure because it was important that they begin to break away from the family. And this is one of the ways that they could do so, by becoming a part of peer groups. I'd like to pose a question to the panel here and ask you to respond, thinking about these quotes. Usually when you hear peer pressure, it has a negative connotation to it. It's as though it's something that is not good. And yet here are two people who are in essence saying that teenagers should respond to teen pressure. Peer pressure. Teenagers should become parts of group, that these are protective groups and will help them. How many responses do you see any difference? Would you encourage kids at the high school level, the middle school level, to become responsive to peer pressure, in some cases to yield to it, even though we would seem to think that that's a negative kind of thing? How do you feel about that, some of you? Chuck, how about starting with you?
Yes, I feel that it's very important for the teenager to start to break away and to develop themselves away from their parents. And the peer group at this time does serve to reinforce them, to make them aware of who they are, to allow them to check themselves. However, I don't like to look at peer pressure all the time as just being negative. There are some positive aspects to it also, and that's why I feel that young people should experience the pressure. Again, they have to make their decision, perhaps weigh the consequences of their actions. It's one thing for a young man, for example, to want to dress up his car and to make it look nice. That's peer pressure. The young men that he associates with want that. It's another thing to want to take that car and then race it, okay, which is something that could be potentially dangerous to those involved. So while there's peer pressure, there are both sides there, and young people have to learn to weigh the cost along with peer pressure.
How about some of the rest of you? How do you feel? Any reactions, comments to that?
Well, I think that I would use the term peer influence as a way maybe of couching the positive aspects of it. I mean, I don't think kids have in one sense, they don't have a choice as to whether they're surrounded by pressure and influence. It's there when you're in a group. And I agree very much with the second quotation about the necessity to break away from family and to stand on your own 2 feet and to begin to make your own decisions. And a part of that is responding to the culture around you. Certainly there can be excesses to it, but I think it's a positive drive, to tell you the truth.
All right. Alicia, you know that you're going to get, quote, picked on, unquote, up there, okay, as the only student in the audience. How would you react to this? Reverend Walker's just said about how important it is to break away from family. How do you feel?
It is important to a certain extent. It helps you to build your character, I'll say that much. But it also teaches you what's right and what's wrong by going along with your mistakes. Like if you do adhere to peer pressure, eventually there's going to be something as a consequence if it's something negative. So that's how I see it.
Okay. We have some parents here, and even though they've sworn me to not call on any of them, okay, with threats to my life, I'm going to anyway. We've heard some statements here now from several different people about the importance of these students coming through high school, breaking away from family and moving with other groups. How do you as parents react to that? How do you feel about that? Mrs. de Blasio, I saw you reaching for the mic right there.
I think that younger siblings, younger brothers or sisters, have a lot of peer pressure or influence from older brothers or sisters. I think they also have that influence or pressure, whatever way it turns out to be, to break away from their family. I think older brothers have a tendency to look at their younger brothers and on more than one occasion say, oh, come on, grow up, and, you can't do that for the rest of your life. And I just think that, it's just not students or fellow students. I think the pressure and the influence comes from older brothers or sisters.
Thank you very much. Another parent like to respond, Mrs. Nicholas? You've had several students here in the high school. How about you with your daughters?
Well, I don't quite have anything to say at this moment, but I did want to raise this question. We're basically talking about teenage peer pressure. I think there's peer pressure all through life, and I don't know if it is more significant in formulating a personality of a teen or not. I just think there's peer pressure, whether you're a teacher, you've got pressure. I'm sure the panelists also have some type of peer pressure. There's pressure to be in being a parent and just showing up at a parents club meeting, that kind of thing.
Or being asked to talk to you on your microphone. Sure. And there's your subject for next year. We're going to talk about pressure on the parents and the teachers. To heck with these teenagers, okay? Let's get to the real nitty-gritty. Two areas I'd like to talk about here when we speak about some of the pressure and going along with the crowd. Cutting, which many students feel is becoming a significant problem. Several comments from students was that it may be even a wider problem than some of us are aware. I'm sure that Chuck is aware of it. I, as a teacher, am not as aware of it maybe as others would be. And grades. And maybe we can speak about the cutting issue first. And Sergeant Stewart, Rich, I don't know whether you, in your travels around, run into many students who are cutting or have problems with cutting. I wonder if you have any chance to interact with students in this kind of a situation where you catch them in places where they're not supposed to be when they're supposed to be here in school.
I often think I could run a shuttle bus between Forest Avenue and the high school, picking kids that are in various stages of coming to school late or picking kids up and returning them to the school, to Chuck namely. It is a problem, especially in nice weather. It seems like spring comes and there are vast hordes of people leaving the high school by the way of the back door and cutting through. It is an issue. Some of the kids are doing it, I think around grade time, report card time, you find more kids leaving. I think kids get to the point, they realize that they're doing badly near the time the report cards are coming out, and it's a nice day. They have a greater tendency to leave than if they're doing well in school. I don't think you can blame it on peer pressure or saying they leave because their friends are doing it. Usually when you pick up the kids, it's one or two at a time. And they want to leave because they want to leave. It has nothing to do with someone egging them on. The whole peer pressure concept, I'm not sure I believe in. I would feel funny if my boys said they wanted to wear a pair of brown wingtips to school, because that's not their part of life. Their part of life is high-top sneakers at this point. If they want to wear a haircut the way I do, I'd have to wonder about them, because that's not their part of life. But I don't know if that's peer pressure. And like the one parent said, adults, you go out with the guys, one more beer, that's peer pressure, if you want to call it that. So I think it's kind of a cop-out to blame everything on peer pressure. Some of it's just your stage of life, and that's what you do in your stage of life. And to blame when the other guys are doing it, you can't do that. I mean, we can't blame all our problems, and I think a lot of kids have a tendency to get in trouble, and they come to see me in my office, well, Johnny did it. Well, Johnny's not taking the blame, he didn't get caught. This is you. It's your life and your problem. And you made it, and you can't, pass it on to the next guy. That's his problem. It's your problem.
You must be reading my mind, because later on in the evening, one of the curves I planned on throwing at you, which is not going to be a curve any longer, was just dealing with the exact kind of statement that you made about peer pressure. Lincoln Center, Debbie, do you have a problem with cutting or students leaving down there?
Absolutely, especially when the weather gets nice. It's actually amazing how the children are mandated to attend our school, and all of a sudden the weather turns nice and 20 kids out of 50 are gone. They're just not there. Now, whether it's because 6 of their friends also decided to cut, or just that they didn't want to come to school, it's hard to tell.
Okay. Mike, I want to pose it to you also, because you work with the younger kids. And I wonder if you see things along the line of this kid's leaving school, particularly as, heck, we all want to be outside, okay? When it gets nice like this. Do you notice it down at the middle school?
At the middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you have an occasional truancy, but you can count them on one hand. Lateness, it's not really as severe a problem yet, but your second area that you wanted to cover, the enthusiasm about good grades, you see certain characteristics of that. I agree with something that Officer Stewart said. In 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they're going through so many psychological and physical changes so quickly from 11 to about 14 that sometimes the peer pressure, you like that security in the group, but they're not even aware of some of the changes they're going through. They're so quickly, those young teenage adolescent years starting. But no, we didn't have the problem. The school's so small that the cutting classes isn't a problem, but it's tough when you look at the attendance sheet and you see a 11 or 12-year-old truant from school. You wonder, why is this happening? Who's responsible for this child?
Alicia, you're on the hot seat again.
Okay.
Weather's nice. No, I'm not going to ask you for a opinion. I'm going to ask you a question. Have you cut this year?
No.
Okay. Do you have friends who have cut or are cutting now? You don't have to name them. Chuck will get their names after.
Can I just interject in what they were
Yes.
saying? I think that as a senior and being a student and everything, that everybody, if you cut, it's because you know you can get away with it. Okay, so if you're going to skip school one day, they have the little recording that calls your house. Well, your son or daughter was not in school today. I mean, it's easy to just pick up the phone and hang it back. You know, your parents will never know about, no, Dad, I never did that. But
I was going to ask him that.
But it's easy to just do that and your parents never find out. So I think, and as far as skipping class and everything, so many places in the school where you can just hang out without Miss Banks finding you or anybody else finding you, you know. So I just think students do it just to, when they know they can get away with it.
All right. I'm going to come back to this issue just a moment. We have a phone call. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, you're with us. Would you like to ask a question of the panel? And then don't be insulted, but I'm going to hang up on you and you can listen to the answer, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to know what we can do in the school to battle the apathy among a lot of students and encourage more students to be involved in student activities, especially in the springtime when a lot of kids don't want to come to any events.
Thank you. Must be somebody who, an after-hours parent, huh? Yes, I know. How about some answers from somebody?
Part of the problem is nowadays too many kids are working at the various jobs, the malls and the McDonald's and wherever. I mean, you can go anywhere on Main Street in West Norton. There has to be 5 restaurants that will hire a boy or girl instantaneously to work behind the counter. Now, if a kid has a chance to do something on the outside versus making $5 an hour, most of them will take the $5 an hour because they want the $100, Air Jordan sneakers, and they want the fancy clothes, and that's where they're at. They're working. Years ago, we came in society where we weren't mobile. When I grew up, I walked everywhere. It was nothing to walk 3 miles to where you were going. You go out to Norristown High right now, or during school day, loads of cars. Everybody has a car. Everybody is mobile. So if they go to the mall, to their job, or they go to McDonald's for their job, they want money. Money's the name of the game. Money buys you the VCRs, the disc players, and all the other neat little things that mom and dad can't supply. And I think that's where half the energy goes now, the kids working. Kids, I know one boy that worked in a restaurant in West Norton. He, at 16, had a charge card with $1,000 wrapped up in it. He signed 18 on the application. They gave him the credit card, and he charged. And when he stopped charging, it was at $1,000. He couldn't charge anymore, and he was forced to work that 25 hours a week to make the money to pay off the charge. That's where your kids are.
Alicia, I think you had a reaction here also.
Yes, I did. I don't think that it's, all right, I agree with the part about working and everything, but sometimes, like for some students, they don't have the encouragement from home. And I think that plays a big part of it, as well as encouragement from their teachers. So maybe if we had more encouragement from home, and even from our friends, because some of my friends, they say, oh, you're in student council, ha, 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 big joke, you know, or you're a cheerleader and cheerleader suck, you know, that kind of thing. And it's the pressure from your friends, but you need encouragement from your friends and your teachers and your parents also.
I suppose a question to you, then, and really others can react to this. Mike might have a reaction to this too. You mentioned cheerleaders. You're an active young lady in various things, and obviously you enjoy doing this and you've gotten a lot out of it. Is there any pressure on you not to be a part of these things, to drop out of these things because friends, other teenagers are not participating, they're working or they're doing other things?
There is at times, but once I voice my opinion on it, everybody usually just clams up. Because I believe in doing what I want to do and not what somebody else wants me to do.
So you're strong enough in yourself to say that and stand behind it.
I believe so.
I think that's a big issue in terms of the pressure issue, internal strength, which can come from family, be passed on, and then you develop it as you go. And I guess it's a lamentation that the school isn't able to see more students involved in some of the activities, but if what I hear is being said, that it's part of this culture in which we live, that the times have changed. So perhaps we can't do it ideally anymore.
Bob and I had talked earlier before the program started, and I coach all year long at the middle school level, and children go to the high school. And as the years go by, they come back to visit, and more of them, I will say, are you playing lacrosse, are you playing basketball, are you playing hockey? And it used to be yes, and it seems now to increase, not entirely, but it increases that, no, Mr. Taylor, I got a job, I work at the mall now, I got a job, I needed the money for this. And you sort of hate to see that because they enjoyed that athletic atmosphere or student council, getting dances ready at the middle school level, and then we tease, we coined the high school the factory. You're going up to the factory now. How will you manage to get by? And I've seen that over the years.